Hello everybody, and welcome to day 4 of the Harmonic Convergence. Today we are talking about moving with nature and going from this despair that we're in currently into a place of natural union. And my name is Una Chaplin, and I am so grateful to be here with you, Mark. Thank you so much for opening your home to us and having us here. It's such a pleasure and so interesting to be here and hearing your stories. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to start by just saying, the reason I'm here. And that's, I heard about your story and I found it really fascinating. And what really made me want to come here and talk to you was learning about your interest in indigenous wisdom and in earth-based natural sciences in that way. And because I've been working with indigenous people for about 7 years now, really deeply with a broad spectrum actually of different cultures and learning as much as I can and trying to integrate that into my own life. And in this whole process, the thing that I've noticed the most in terms of how it's affected my life is my deeper feeling and my deeper sense of this trauma that we have of separation from the natural world and all of the devastation that ensues from this feeling of being other, being separated. And this became very real for me, and that changed me deeply. And so my first question to you today is, how has your relationship with nature changed after your relationship with Terbar?
I've always been in love with nature since I was a boy. Loved animals. I loved being out in the woods and in the field, catching bugs and frogs, and then when I captured them, I would hold them, like frogs, for instance. I loved frogs for some reason. And I remember as a little boy being fascinated with the designs, like on a leopard frog skin. And I would want to calm them down so I could uncover them and look at them closely. And I knew they were scared because I could feel their heart beating. And so I would just hold them and try to speak softly to them and just hold them close to my heart. And I would be like this for a while until I could feel their heart rate slowing down. And then I would slowly start raising my hand, and if they tried to get away, I'd clamp down on them again. And then I would go back out, and eventually I could tame them to stay in my hand. And then I could look at them and study the patterns. And I just felt such a connection to nature and the beauty of the frog and all these different animals. And I did this habitually as a boy. And it developed in me a real appreciation for the beauty, the natural beauty in all forms of nature. Yeah. And that stayed with me my entire life. And when I went to college and then began my career in IT, in the IT industry, you lose that connection because you're not out in nature. I was starting my career and focused on developing a career and making a living so I could provide for my family. And so that is how the disconnect, I think, happens for so many of us, that as children we play out in the woods with our friends or by ourselves, and we get exposed to that on a regular basis, and then we lose it. And then the disconnect is set in. So after I sold my first company, I built my first house, and that took a while, but my house was set on a lake, and it was a pristine plot of land that I had purchased, and which meant I had to knock down some trees to clear space for the house foundation. And I remember having a real sense of regret about tearing down these century oaks that were on the shoreline of my property. And then the first year after we built our house, we had frogs that were going from the wetlands in front of the house to the lake in the back, and they would come through. Because I had this massive house that was very long, it funneled the frogs into a archway that was the motor court that entered the motor court in the back of the house. And we would have hundreds, if not thousands, of little tiny frogs that had hatched in the wetlands and were making their way to the lake. These frogs would sit around all the recessed lights and eat bugs. And it was, there were times when I couldn't drive in there in the spring. This, I think, was an example of my personal reconnection to nature and a sense of guilt for taking so much space away from what was naturally theirs. The question of being disconnected from nature is a direct consequence of the system that we've established for ourselves so that we can make a living. And we need to make a conscious effort to reconnect with nature by going hiking or camping or otherwise getting back into the woods or wherever it is. And I think it's really an important point to state that it's just it's just an outcome, a natural outcome of our system. And it's a detrimental outcome that we need to address. And we need to, how are we going to ensure that our children and ourselves as adults maintain that connection and that balance with nature? Because it's been the root cause of our problems, I believe.
Yeah, and on that subject, there was an elder that I work with from the Yawanawa people in the Brazilian Amazon, and we were having a conversation one day, and he said something that really stayed with me. He said that, we were talking about the natural devastation and the changes in the world and the droughts and the fires and all of this, and he said, the thing is that water's not just going to disappear. Water's going to move, it's going to change. And the people that understand, the people that have a relationship with water, that can hear what the water is saying, the water's messages, that have a good relationship with water, will know where to go and how to change and how to move with the water in this way. And those that don't will perish.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you about any insights that Tejbar might have given you or that you might have learned about the language of nature and how we can better interpret the signs and better understand what is needed from us.
Sure.
Does nature have a language?
Well, I don't know that it has a language per se, but it certainly has a consciousness. And therein lies the key, that how do you tap into that consciousness? And it's by being in nature and by taking time out of your busy schedule to be quiet in a place in which you're in nature. That should be a part of our practice. And that's why the indigenous are so wise to all of this, because they're in nature all the time. They live in nature and they're in balance, in symbiotic balance with nature. And that gives them a unique connection, and they're able to tap in and hear nature however it is they do that. I believe it's through these dimensions of consciousness that I referred to earlier, that there's 15 dimensions of consciousness, and those are not very well developed among those of us who don't meditate or otherwise don't make a concerted effort to develop these higher levels of consciousness. So that's part of the secret. And the other is, to do it in nature and listen, study, meditate, and then take the time after you meditate to listen. And that what we call is contemplate or contemplation. And that's when the magic happens. That's when the connection is made and the language is spoken, whatever that is for you.
It actually really reminds me of the story that you were saying before with the frogs, because we were just in Peru, and in Peru it's the frogs that call the rain. And they're very, very important, very sacred beings.
Very.
And it also kind of harks back to this Dene proverb that I'm familiar with, that is that if the prairie dogs are gone, there'll be no one left to call for the rain. And this is a really interesting concept about indigenous wisdom, is that when the prairie dogs were almost exterminated by colonialism, right, by the settlers, right, that coincides exactly with the decrease of rainfall in Southwest America.
Right.
And so even if this is a proverb in the Dene culture, this has science, and so it's deemed superstition, but actually this is a part of the language, right? And this also calls for me as the performance of function, like is it the prairie dogs that call for the rain? Is it, what are the functions of each one of us, right? And how do we remember that function? So I'm really curious as to what anything that Teshbar would have said about our function within the natural balance of this planet, our function within nature here.
Well, to answer that question, I would go back to something that was the core learning from Teshbar that I call the Universal Consciousness Development Chart. And it speaks to this question of our relationship to nature. So he told me that consciousness begins in the animal kingdom with regards to the development of the ego. Now we have plant consciousness, we have mineral consciousness, which precedes animal consciousness, but it's at the point of arthropods, like a fruit fly, for instance, that has a very tiny brain. In fact, I don't know that it's technically a brain. It's a ganglion of neurons and synapses that provides the basic function of, the fly.
Yeah.
And it's there that life or conscious life begins in the animal kingdom. And through the modus operandi of reincarnation, the soul, the individualized soul in a container that is the physical body of the fly, is developed. And when the fly dies, that little spark of consciousness that was the fly is released and finds a new host in the developing embryo or egg of a new insect. And that happens many, 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 many times in the first stage of conscious evolution, in the animal kingdom I'm talking about. So at some point, you go to stage 2, and he described that as the animals of the amphibians, the reptiles, and the fish. And so to be a fish, for instance, you had to have been thousands of different species of insects to get to be a fish. And then that process continues. So in stage 2, you've been many different species of fish, of amphibians, and reptiles, until you then transition to stage 3.
It's like a graduation process through the
right.
stages. It reminds me of what Paramahansa Yogananda says about God sleeps in the rocks, dreams in the flowers, wakes in the animals, and in the humans realizes that he is awake.
Yeah.
Right. And then what?
So stage 3 is birds and waterfowl. And it is in stage 3 that I'm told that the heart chakra begins developing. So what's happening in concert with this physical process of reincarnation is that the energy body, the astral body, as Teshbar called it, is developing. And it is it is the nascent stage of the astral body development in which the first 2 or 3 chakras are developed. So it's all about survival and procreation, the root chakra and the sacral chakra, right? And then solar plexus also plays a role in these early stages, but it's not until the 3rd stage with the birds and the waterfowl that the heart chakra begins developing within the animal, within the soul of the animal, or the astral body of the animal. And if you look at the behavior of birds, there are many species that will mate for life. And you don't find that in the reptilian or the amphibian families or in the insects. They come together once to procreate and they leave. With birds, you have the first occurrence in this development of the soul where the attributes associated with love, like loyalty, teamwork, commitment, are developing in that soul. Then stage 4 is marsupials and mammals. And the soul is further developed in more complex social networks, like a wolf pack or a pack of meerkats, where they have roles. They work together as a team.
And societies.
And a society.
Yeah.
And then we graduate to the human level. And it was Teshbar that said, you must go through the animal kingdom to enter the gates of the human kingdom. So if this is true, and I believe it is, we have this very tight connection to nature that goes beyond just being out in nature and appreciating it. We are nature. We have gone through these animals. We have been those animals. So that's our deep connection to them. You were the frog. You were the praying mantis. You were the butterfly. You were the eagle. You were the wolf, right? You were these animals.
We even go through a lot of these stages of evolution inside the womb. Like we start as a single
exactly.
cell organism.
It's reflected in the
then,
physical development of the embryo,
exactly.
right? I mean, it's so obvious when you really research it. And the Native American culture and indigenous cultures around the world embrace the concept of the spirit realm, including animals. Right? The eagle and the wolf are very strong spiritual totems in those cultures of the Native Americans of North America and in other cultures. And it's because they understand that those animals were critical in our personal development as humans, that they brought, the spirit of the wolf, for instance, was something that helped you become a better human. There was something taught in that body of a wolf, in that incarnation of a wolf, that taught you something important about social interactions and responsibility in a tribe. So that's how they honor the animals, the spirit animals.
And there's also this sense of the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, right? In the sense that we're talking about individualized soul developments in this way, but also within the greater context of the sort of complex living organism that is Gaia, right? And so right now we have in the world a very geomechanical kind of perspective on how the world works. We say, okay, it's fine to cut down this forest over here because we'll replant a forest over there, without really taking much consideration as to the qualitative, intrinsic spirit, nature, personality, soul development, progression of this forest specifically. And that's, I guess, my next question sort of dives into a place that I feel is very important. And I just was very curious to see how your relationship with Teshbar and everything you've been learning has affected this. Is how do we make that transition between the quantitative to the qualitative, to saying we can't count the units in the same way that we can be the whole?
Yeah, well, I think there are two areas to talk about this question of how do we switch from a quantitative to a qualitative lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I think that's critical. I think that's a central part of what we're doing in the Harmonic Convergence, is bringing these issues up. And I think the primary thing that of why we live quantitatively is due to time, the way that we perceive time. We're taught that time is money, and money is a quantitative thing that can be measured, instead of thinking of time as a quality thing. Where's that discussion? It isn't really in our vernacular or in our consciousness put front and center quite like money is, and the relationship between money and time, and the way that we organize our week or our monthly schedule. And it's a form of prison, actually, that we need to break out of. And that was Jose Arguelles's biggest emphasis of the first Harmonic Convergence, is that the Mayans understood something about time that was crucial in freeing us from this slavery of the mind and our association with quantitative existence versus an existence of quality. And one of the key points was the Mayan calendar was based on a 13-month calendar with 28 days, with one additional day called the day out of time, so that it would, all add up to 365 days. If you do the math, 13 times 28 gives you 364, so you need one more day to get a full solar year. So his big message was, we got to break out of this. The Gregorian calendar is something that's really upsetting the natural balance. The effect of it is that we are living in a system of time based on the Gregorian calendar that is out of sync with nature, right? So we should be living on a calendar that's in sync with the cycles of the moon. It's crazy that we have a month, a bunch of months with 31 days and some with 30, and then one with 28, and sometimes it's 29. It's crazy. And the way the Mayans looked at time was much more qualitative. I mean, if you know anything about the way that they, the dream spell concept and way they named days,
After the energies that govern them.
That's right. So this is something we need to really put front and center, and is a strategic part of the harmonic convergence, introducing this concept and this meme of adopting the Mayan calendar and switching over to it. It's okay, we can have both Gregorian and Mayan systems, but the bottom line is we need to begin switching over, and eventually, you know, for those of us that can, just forget the Gregorian calendar. I really don't keep track of time, the day of the week or the day of the month, really. I'm not so concerned with the day of the month anymore. You know, the 7 days in a week and there are 4 weeks in a month, that, you know, that's pretty basic and that fits, but it's the number of days per month and the way we name them that really has us enslaved in a way. That's one point. And then the other point is just thinking about our relationship with money has got to change. The way that it enslaves us and has enslaved us for so long, and that if we want to be truly free in terms of governing ourselves, money is a crucial part of that, the way we exchange energy in the form of physical material products. You know, money is very useful as an exchange for trade, but the problem is that our attachment to it and the way that we view it and the value we associate with it is totally upside down. So how do we fix that? And I think that's one of the big challenges ahead of us, but I think we've got really good ideas. Number one thing is we got to take control of our own money. You know, the idea that there's a Federal Reserve, it's a private company that is in charge of interest rates and printing the money for the government, and they charge interest that we pay for and goes to a private company, and that's got to go. Yeah. That's the number one thing that's got to go. It's that they're vampires, they're energy vampires. That's really the bottom line. It's not necessarily that they're setting prices on things. That happens in a free market, and I think the free market, by and large, is working, you know, fairly decently, although there's a problem with capitalism. Without regulation, it just ends up, you know, creating monopolies, and then, you know, then there is no free market anymore, because when you're a monopoly, you just charge whatever you want, and you're extracting value out of people, and it's a crime. We can't continue to live this way, and we all know this, at least those of us that are aware and awoke. But the big challenge is, how do we fix that? And the bottom line is we have to elect while we still have a functioning democracy, and that's a big question. But while we still have a functioning democracy, we need to elect leaders that truly represent us, and not, you know, lobbyists and, you know, the other people that pay for them. And that whole system is screwed up.
But there's also an element that's kind of outside of the realms of governance, and that is again another natural element, which is I'm just reflecting on the pandemic, right, that we've just lived through, and seeing how this one tiny microorganism, or is it a microorganism? They haven't isolated it yet, so who knows? But one element of nature has completely changed the way that we operate in ways that we would have thought impossible even 2 days before the quarantine began, right? The shutdown began. And I've kept hearing all of these sort of comments of like, oh, finally nature can take a breath, and oh, she's so happy right now, nature's so happy. And I have my sort of reservations about that comment, because I think she's like a concerned mother who's grounded her children. But there's this aspect of like, we've made changes that are so big and so huge in the way we produce and the way we travel, all because of fear. Now, my question is, can we make those changes in that magnitude out of love, out of a place of love and care for nature, for life, for the sanctity of life, of the beings, of how people are saying the economy's crashed because people are only buying what they need. And it's like, well, how do we re-enter into that place of balance in what we need, figuring out what we need? Can we change from a place of care? That's my question, I guess, about Teshbar. Has he ever told you anything about that place of like empowering love to that magnitude where it's capable of great change?
Well, my first response to that is that everything's perfect. So this pandemic is part of a divine orchestrated plan that's playing out. And so if you believe that, and I do in my heart totally, there's nothing to worry about. What we're learning through this pandemic is the importance of being healthy, of staying fit, eating healthy foods. So there's a lot more awareness now to eating organic, I think, than there's ever been. And that people who are most susceptible to the COVID virus are those that are elderly or otherwise weak or malnourished or overweight. Fatalities are clearly people of weakness typically. And so the lesson from that is, stop eating crap and get out and exercise. And if you're outside exercising in the sunshine, there's benefits to that, health benefits and spiritual benefits, and it gets you out in nature more as well. Just being outdoors puts you by default in nature to some degree, to some level. And there are many people who sit inside and watch TV all day, or work in an office all day, and they're so tired when they get home, they crash and they're never outside. So they're eating what's inexpensive or convenient and not giving any consideration to what's healthy. So those people are suffering right now. And I have sympathy for them, but it's a learning process. This is one of the lessons that we learn in a lifetime of this day, that health matters if you want to have a quality life. And if you are not keeping your body in shape and eating good foods when there's a pandemic like this or any illness, you are statistically more at risk. So this is one of the takeaways. We all understand the problems with our food supply, not just with the things like glyphosate tainting our food and other toxins, but we also understand the importance of regenerative agriculture and permaculture practices that grow healthy, nutrient-rich foods, and that we can actually subsidize what we buy at the store with things we grow at home. And that's really important, that we have some kind of relationship with food that really is a relationship with nature, beyond the discussions we've had so far. So many of us, all we do is buy and eat the food from a fast food place or from the grocery store, and have very little direct relationship with the raw products. We just buy what tastes good and makes us, comfort food or whatever. It's not healthy. It's not healthy for many reasons, mentally, physically, or emotionally, because our emotions are direct results of things we eat. What you are is what you eat.
You've literally just quoted something that I have written down here, because that was going to be my next question, because food is a really big topic.
Absolutely.
We have this notion as well that when we see an apple hanging off a tree, we understand very well that the apple came from the tree. But when we see ourselves walking around upon this earth like loose cannons often, we don't have culturally that understanding that we come from the earth, and yet we're ingesting everything that comes from the earth and excreting into the earth. And those cycles that seem to be broken.
Right.
Now, there's something that I've also learned a lot about in my studies and my relationship with Indigenous elders, and that's a concept of reciprocity. And I wanted to ask you about any insights into a better way of reciprocity that we may have right now in very practical terms, in terms of our relationship with nature.
There are those of us who are blessed with with things in our life that make us privileged. It may have been good parents that resulted in a good upbringing and having a balanced, emotional and upbringing, developmentally I'm speaking of. And that gives you a great foundation for a successful life in business and in life. So those of us that have had that experience have a great advantage. And I've been blessed. I had a wonderful youth with loving parents. And I went to college because my mom saved money and ensured me that I would always be able to go to college. I went to college and I did very well. And then I started my career in computers. And off I went, and became very successful in business. But that isn't offered to people often of color. Because of lots of issues, their broken homes, parents that are can't afford to send their children to college, or a single mom is raising, 2 or 3 kids and living on welfare and hardly has enough to feed their kids. And so what those of us that are privileged have a responsibility to recognize that we owe it to our brothers and sisters that aren't privileged to help them. And that's what governments are supposed to do. That's what the function of a government is, to make sure that the entire membership of its community is benefiting, or I should say that there should be safety nets and programs in place to help those that are struggling, that aren't being served or otherwise have access to, a future that was available to those of us who are privileged. And that's missing. Mm-hmm. And that's, the bottom line is it's a lack of love. It's a lack of empathy for people who struggle. And it's a real sad statement on our society when you have people who refuse to acknowledge that there are people, especially people of color, the African American community, the indigenous community, that have been oppressed, and systematically so, and the police that have been able to hurt or otherwise murder people without any kind of justice being served. That's evil. That's just my definition of evil, is a lack of empathy. And these people lack empathy. And the question is, how do we break them out of that?
Yeah.
And I think that the source of it is our institutional systems of politics and religion. The whole duality concept of us and them, me versus you. And that there's a limit to resources, and so we are all competing for a limited amount of resources, so that gives rise to this threat of the other taking things that we need. In reality, the abundance of this planet is immense. There's plenty of food to go around. If only we were to all, especially those of us who are blessed and are privileged, if we could put our heads together and agree that we have a moral obligation to help those that are less privileged and stuck in a cycle of poverty, to help them. I mean, what the hell? What's going on? So I think we're on the verge of a breakthrough, and I'm very optimistic. I think this is what's happening right now, is we're really forced to face our demons. And many of us, I believe Anne Frank was right when she wrote in her diary that everybody's good. They just need to be shown goodness. They need to be loved. They're people that have just lacked love. So how do we create a love vibe that's global? Yeah. And that's what the Harmonic Convergence is really about.
Yeah, and you've touched something that I'm really, really, just very, very dear to my heart, which is this idea that social justice and environmental justice and beauty and harmony and care are not separate issues. Right. They're not, we have the riots outside and then we have the fires in the Amazon, and it's two separate things. No, they're not. For me, any person who would put a rhinoceros in a cage, or any race or species that would put a rhinoceros in a cage, is instantly putting themselves above another form of life. Right. And therefore will treat their mothers in the same kind of way, will treat their elders, will treat their neighbors, will treat the foreigners, will treat other people in that same way of above and below.
Right.
right? And that
And you know, I'm sad to say it, but I believe that belief of us being a superior species and mastering nature for our purpose, you know, for whatever outcome we wish, is propagated by religion more than any single
really
thing.
interesting, because there's three papal bulls in the last part of the 14th century that actually demonstrate that. And there's the first one that was 1455, where the Vatican gave King Alfredo the permission to colonize Africa, take the land and the people in the name of the Vatican. The second one was the burning of the witches and the forbidding of any earth-honoring ceremonies in Europe. For 300 years this lasted. And the third was Inter Cetera, which gave Christopher Columbus permission to come to America and take the people and the land for the benefit of the King and Queen of Spain, which then were subject to the Vatican.
Right.
And this actually brings up something that I'm also really fascinated in this sense of this period of time being fundamental in the divorcing of people from place. So you were suddenly a black person, you didn't come from that land. Now I'm coming to that land and I will rule over you because now I own this land. But wait, I come from here. No, you're black. You're so there's that distinction of race.
Yeah.
And it's the separation of the people from nature, from the cycles of time, as you were talking about, the medicine of the plants. And so I guess in this next evolution of our species, of our planet, right, how do we step forward and serve what wants to be born so that we can continue evolving and do people like Tejbar proud?
Well, I think just trying to be a positive influence in the world, you know, that attitude that, you know, adopting a mantra or a philosophy that I'm going to leave the world a better place than I left it, at least my little sphere of influence. And then you can get creative on extending your sphere of influence. You know, how do you, okay, am I going to be a communal leader, you know, in a community, and focus my energy on establishing a new community that supports and promotes a type of philosophy, communal philosophy, that embodies these principles that we talk about, that we believe lead to a flourishing, happy society? Or do we try to go on another level, a national level, maybe go into politics as you know, in that system? You know, there are challenges with that, of course, but I think there's lots of ways that we can each individually decide how we're going to make the world a better place. And it doesn't really matter, in my opinion, whether you're doing it in a very small community, maybe it's just your family, trying to be that anchor that everybody can go to whenever they're feeling down to raise their spirits. If you're that person, maybe it was my grandmother who played that role within our family, who was always happy-go-lucky and hug every grandchild. And
very important part of that life, of that community, of course.
So my grandmother was one of those people who, whenever you were in her circle, in her sphere of influence at her house, you couldn't help but be happy. And you could tell by the way she decorated her house, and there were special candies that she made that were always available when I visited her. And she just made it about me and about the other cousins that were visiting her. And so that has a big impact. You know, you just don't, we don't, I think, appreciate how much a grandmother or an individual can have just by smiling and being happy and exuding an energy that's infectious.
I've been focusing a lot on the nature of this earth, right? And I have two questions that I would like to really touch on right now, and that's, you know, one is I understand that Tejbar came from the south of Chile. Is that, or when he was last
Tierra del Fuego in his last human life? Yeah, that's right.
Just interested in that timeline, because my ancestors are from there as well, just north of there, actually.
Yeah.
And very fascinated about the time, if that was, because I know that in our history there's been what is sort of mythically referred to as the Great Flood, right? Across the world, the climate changes, and we lost 90% of all of our species and had to really struggle for a long time to survive,
Right.
And I was just curious as to if Teshbar was there before that period or after the Great Flood. Has he ever mentioned that?
Here's what he told me when I asked him. He claimed that he was a chieftain of one of the tribes of Atlantis, and that there was some kind of turmoil, and there was the anticipation of some kind of cataclysmic event that wasn't good. And so he fled with his tribe in ships. He said in ships, and at the time I assumed they were sailing ships, because this was during the communion. The 13 days I was with him that he mentioned this. And he said he sailed south. He was told by Spirit or by God to sail south until he could sail south no longer, and then he would settle that area. So if you believe that, he was either sailing down the east or the west coast of South America until he got to the Tierra del Fuego area, and I think that's the Sea of Magellan, forget what that point in southern tip of South America is called. But he, sailed down there, or landed ships. Maybe they were spaceships, I don't know. And I assumed it was the east coast of South America. And he got down to Tierra del Fuego and realized he was coming around the Horn of Magellan, and that was it. So he settled that area, and he led for a long time the tribe that he was chieftain of in Tierra del Fuego, and that's where they settled. And he was a chieftain evidently for a very long time. I don't know what that meant. I didn't ask. And then when he died, he ascended. That is kind of his origin story. And then there was another opportunity where he told me more about his origins. And I won't get into that because it's complex and it'll confuse you and me. Well, it won't confuse me. I've wrapped my head around it, but
another time.
It's for another time.
Another time. Okay, I look forward to that time. And my final question is, I want to sort of zoom out and talk about the forces of nature at a galactic, at a universal, at a planetary level, kind of, because nature is much more than just the Earth, right? Nature is cosmic. Is the everything. And I noticed that in this vein of moving with nature, we are having this harmonic convergence at this time of these planets aligning in this particular way. And I've been hearing a lot about astrology, and I hear that you're fascinated with astrology. And so I just wanted to kind of ask about moving in with nature in that way of within the cosmos, not just within our neighborhood, but actually encompassing that. How do we do that best? How do we move with nature in that way?
Well, I talked about the calendar, moving to the Mayan system. And many indigenous people around the world live by a 13-month calendar. It's remarkable that this seems to have been a tradition that was adopted by the indigenous all over the world. There's something to that, and I think the bottom line is that we're out of harmony when we are living by a calendar system that is not a 13-month calendar system. So there's a cosmic natural rhythm that we're out of sync with, and the harmonic convergence implies this, in that we're converging to a point in our evolutionary history in which we are going to sync up with this cosmic calendar, and that will help accelerate our synchronicity and our frequency with the higher beings, because they're operating at a much higher frequency, and that's a love vibe. It's when you're happy and you're full of love and gratitude and in the flow, in trust with that everything's going to be fine and there's nothing to fear. That's the true power of our consciousness, that there's really nothing to fear, really nothing, especially if you believe in reincarnation and that you survive death. If you really believe that, and I do, I'm not worried about dying. I think dying, that concept that the finality of death is one of the things that is at the root of our fears and takes so much energy of our day, especially as we get older and we feel ourselves, kind of falling apart. We need to break out of that. And so understanding that we're immortal and that this is just one of many incarnations that I'm having and have had and will have is freeing and will help us accelerate our evolution as a community on this planet and allow us to synchronize and be at a level of consciousness of these higher beings, higher dimensional beings, and then we can communicate, then we can, start partying together.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, that's another beautiful way that we can learn from nature that takes all dead matter and shit and decomposes it, and all of the hungry, holy mouths of the subsoil chew it up and transform it into beautiful, fertile soil that we only need to plant seeds in to nourish ourselves once again. So thank you so much. Fascinating to talk to you. Thank you all for joining, and let's carry
Hello everybody, welcome to the Harmonic Convergence, Day 4, here live at the studio in Ojai, California. Today's theme is Move with Nature, moving from despair to nurturing. And allowing nature to nurture us and for us to nurture nature and then build on that relationship. Today I'm going to be interviewing an incredible woman named Pat McCabe of the Dene people. I first met Pat in Mount Sinai, on top of a mountain with about 300 people that had gathered together to do a really, really deep and powerful prayer. We had, Pat was there representing the indigenous people of North America, and she laid down some really, really, really deep prayer while I was there and while we were all there. And then we had Jewish, Muslim, Christians leaders there, and we unified 8 Bedouin tribes to come together, and we all hiked to the top of this mountain in the middle of the desert. And we did this really powerful prayer, and this is where I first met Pat. And so without further ado, I'd like to welcome you to the live stream here of the Harmonic Convergence 2020. Pat, thank you so much for being here. Please come on and share a little bit about yourself and the work you do in the world.
Thank you so much, Patrick. And I want to say greetings to everyone who's joining us here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you. And I'm coming to you from my mom's house in New Mexico in the Southwest United States, what is now known as the United States. And I'll say I'm from Dene Nation. And in that way, I want to greet you in the way that we formally greet, to say She'e'iya, Tachi Nashni, Aro Ashi'ibashishchi, Ma'irish Gejne Dashenale, Klauschi Daushiche, Guataostane Nashni. So I'm naming my clans and just greet you from that ancient lineage that way. And then I also want to tell you that I was adopted into the Lakota spiritual way of life about 30 years ago. And that's been a way that has informed my journey, my work, my dreams for the future, and for healing. And so in that way, I was given the name Wiakpa Najiwi, and that sort of loosely translates in English to womaning, standing, shining, because being a woman on the planet is definitely an action, a verb, and an energy. And so what am I doing around here? Well, I've been, up until our very recent global situation of the pandemic, I've been zooming all around the planet and proposing that paradigm is a choice, and trying to speak from my culture to say that there are lots of different ways to be human here, using but being in the exact same earth, sky, water, everything, and that we have choices. So I'd say in a nutshell, that's kind of what it seems to me like Spirit has been sending me around to different places to do.
And you were recently in Jerusalem, right? With
I was.
group there. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey?
Yes. So I had the honor of traveling with Ben Bowler to I guess we had 22 different faiths on this journey. There was about 100 of us traveling to Palestine, Jordan, and Israel, and it really felt to me like a continuation of the work that we began at Mount Sinai, and I felt like that was why I ended up on that journey. Eventually, we ended up making a prayer at what is known as the Armageddon site. And that, to me, had the same weight and gravity as the prayers we ended up making on Mount Sinai. Just very, very deep. And what I realized about that part of the world is that part of the world really holds the human psyche, of course, because I'm going to say because of Christianity, even though it's definitely all the faiths there have sort of the same long history, but the way that Christianity spread all over the earth, and whether the peoples that it came to adopted that religion or not,
Right.
those stories are known, and so it's very deep in the human psyche. So to make prayers in that place is, I said, what we ended up doing on that mountain with all these different cultures, all these different faiths coming together, and the women prayed with the water there. And that was also with my brother, Chief Phil Lane Jr. I
was
felt
on a
like we
couple of days ago.
retold a story there, retold a very old story that has been embedded in our psyche about the end times and about the destruction.
And speaking of the destruction, can you speak about what's going on right now in our relationship with nature as a human species, and some protocols that you feel we as humans can start to implement to become in balance and harmony with nature?
Well, I really like this topic of the day. I mean, it's a deep one. I guess they probably all are every day for what you're doing here. But I appreciated it when you just said it just now as introducing our segment here, because we are wounded because of the way that we're wounding this Mother Earth. Just before we went to Sinai last year, I was in South Africa, and with a group of indigenous women, and actually my son and my daughter also from around the world. And
Amazing.
we were on a mountaintop there, and I'm not going to think of the name of it, but making some prayer there. And what was said to me was, you think that the destruction and the extraction is coming from the mining, because of course in Africa, oh my gosh, all that is being taken from the land, and also from the people, and therefore also from the cultures, and also then therefore from the harmony and health of the earth, because those cultures are helping to hold that harmony and health of the earth. And when they get disrupted, then that's no longer happening. So it's a terrible domino effect. But what I was told in Africa was, it looks as though we're extracting, gold and diamonds, and I forget what the one is that makes up our cell phones. All those things are happening there, and
Right.
And so it looks like that's what's being mined. But really, there's a lot that goes on with that's being mined from our own psyche, from our own hearts, from our being. And for generations we've been being led away from what you're terming nature. I'm going to call it the Mother Earth, or the thriving life design. And
Yes.
and so the further we get away from that, the more distress we're in. Just like if you try to bring a wild animal in and domesticate it, they go through a huge stress from being separated from their own place that allows them to fulfill their thriving life design. Well, it's the same for us, and we've managed to create that separation in so many different ways, such that it's hard to find those places. We have to go to reserves, we have to go to parks to sort of interact with nature, or this the way the Mother Earth appears and grows naturally. And so I was told that our psyche is really being mined, and we're actually perhaps being mined for our suffering and our trauma, as we're going through and witnessing what happens. And so we're kind of up against that point right now, I'm going to say. So I'm finding myself being a little disoriented by even using that term nature, honestly, because that's a part of a psychological construct, that there's nature out there,
Right.
and then there's us and our humanity, and what we do and our activities is over here.
Yeah, it's kind of like a separateness
this
in
is-
the notion itself.
Yeah. So so I guess I just noticed that I myself, I like to talk about Mother Earth as incorporating us as her family. We're her children, and she's trying to instruct us, as she has been. From Indigenous perspective, we say, and actually I guess scientific perspective as well, we say that we were the last to arrive. We're the youngest kids on the block around here, and so all these other life forms all around us have deep knowledge of how to live in harmony. I mean, when you think about it, it's really stunning to think about how plant life supports bird life, supports ocean life, supports, as Thich Nhat Hanh says, we're interbeing. And so imagine, creating a symphony, let's use that as an example, of so many different musicians in so many different modalities and being able to create something harmonious. Wow.
Right.
And so what I find is that it's ludicrous that we think that we can know better of how to do something like that. We can't do that. We can't do that. But we can participate in that. Not only can we participate in that, but we can participate in that in such a way that we cause the earth and all of our living relatives around us to thrive. We're not inherently disruptive to that system, which is part of our psychology that I think we also need to nurture, is that we can, and there's scientific evidence for this. My daughter's doing a lot of work around indigenous traditional land practices. And there's evidence, when you take core samples out of the earth, it'll show what was going on in that area because from pollen samples, for instance, what kind of life forms biodiversity were in certain areas, and then what happens when we know that human presence arrived. And so in many instances, we'll see like the vitality and the diversity and the viability of a fruitful land just like explode with our presence. And to me, that is uplifting. That is a new vision of humanity. I say we have very low self-esteem right now as a species. So I love thinking about us that way. So there is a way for us to do that.
What do you mean by we as human beings have a low self-esteem with ourselves? And what do you feel like the solution is, like the deeper undercurrent that's leading us to a more enlightened humanity?
Well, I feel like we have low self-esteem as a species. I mean, not everybody, clearly. Some people are feeling pretty Tarzanish right now about being human and what they can do. Not to pick on Tarzan, but anyway, you know what I mean. So,
Yeah.
but I think that there's many of us, in all of the social justice movements and all the environmental movements, and all the healers and such biologists that are in recognition that most of our activities are completely out of alignment with the thriving life plan of Mother Earth. Right. And so I find a lot when I go to places, and it is a little bit about more preaching to the choir rather than going where people feel like everything is just fine and we're fulfilling some kind of manifest destiny as human beings to have dominance over this planet and etc. But in those places where we're somewhat enough aligned, I feel like I encounter a lot of people feel.
Looks like Pat is frozen. Am I still alive?
Yeah, you're still alive.
Hey guys, how's it going? So while we wait for Pat to come back on, oh, here we are. Hey guys, so apparently Pat is not live. Pat, can you hear me still? You're not hearing me, but I'm live right now, so I'm going to talk to you guys while we figure out how to bring Pat back on. And maybe I'm deepen into a story that I had with Pat. We're gonna bring you back on. I'm seeing her on the screen, and she's like, I can't hear you, and so we're gonna get her back live. Pat, just let me know when. She can't even hear me right now, so I'm gonna continue. There was a moment on top of Mount Sinai, and it was the day before we were going to go out and do this prayer. And there were about 14 of us that were on this production team up there for about a week and a half organizing it. And the day before the prayer, Pat and a woman from Israel, I forget her name, incredible woman. They sat on the side of the mountain, and when you're sitting on the side of the mountain, it's kind of like huge peaks that come out of the desert for like miles and miles and miles, and like the sun is setting and the clouds are moving, and Pat and this woman sat on the side of the mountain, and Pat was very, very deeply inspired to anchor in the prayer of the feminine. And she had brought in moonstones from different tribes to come and plant during this prayer. And so the day before on the side of the mountains, they created these prayer bundles with these moonstones. And I was in production mode, right? And I was just like walking by, and as I was walking by, I felt what they were doing, and I knew, like, wow, something powerful is happening. And that night we kind of went down the mountain, and the 14 of us were met by a couple hundred people that were coming with like camels, on horses, backpacking, all to camp in this one area at the base of Mount Sinai, and then the next day we were going to go out and do this prayer. Hey Pat, are you back on? Do you hear me? Oh, amazing. I was just sharing the story of me witnessing you and the woman from Israel on the side of the mountain creating those prayer bundles before the next day when we were doing the prayer. And I just got to the point in the story where everyone was coming on camels and horses and backpacking to that place at night before we were camping that night, that cold night before that prayer the next day. And you called on all the women to come around the fire to do a women's circle. And I had the honor and the blessing to be standing guard for that moment. So I'm wondering if you could share about that prayer, and then how it relates to now in these times that we're in, and if possible, how does that prayer, how is that relevant to humanity now, and how is that relevant to what we're doing with the harmonic convergence?
Wow, what a memory. What a memory that is of that moment. You know, I've just been, had the honor of being a part of some things that are everything just felt so heightened, and so, I don't know how to describe it, but that was definitely one of those moments that I'll never forget as long as I live. And well, hopefully not to create difficulties, but the situation was that while we were guests of the Aoan tribes, who were indigenous peoples, I guess we could say, of Mount Sinai, and who have say over what they're going to do, there's also that aspect of the authorities, in this case the Egyptian police, who weren't sure about what our gathering was about, and had concerns, I guess. So they arrived that night, and that was the reason why I called us together, because I was feeling concerned that they were going to try to interfere with what we were coming to do. And I felt like what we were there to do was to create something very powerful and very helpful for humanity's future and relationship with Earth. So it just occurred to me to very, very spontaneous to call all the women to the fire, because I'm really working with this understanding that the Mother Earth is the Mother Earth is the ultimate authority, and we as human beings are a little slow. I mean, I'm talking about the sum total of our presence and place. So even though I feel like I'm trying to live in another paradigm, I'm moving out of modern world paradigm and living in another paradigm. I still have to be responsible and be counted in for the sum total of our species presence on the planet. And that's something that I think is important for us to realize. The Mother Earth doesn't understand us and them. Mother Earth only understands we. So we will only ever be that presence. I mean, this is something that really guides my actions. The sum total of our species presence here, and what the impact is of that. So I'm a deep we being here. But so what I would feel is that the Mother Earth's authority is ultimate authority, and nothing going to overcome authority. We're never going to bend the Mother Earth's authority to our way of thinking, to prefer, to the wealth we want to have. She's been tolerating this misbehavior for it's only been a fairly short time. I mean, it's kind of been a long progression leading up to this sudden up of, if you look at the last 75 years of Earth presence, it obliterates pretty much everything that came before in terms of our impact, right? So it took a long time to get to that moment, and then it just took off like a rocket. But I've been saying, that she's the boss, and all false authorities will bow to her eventually. It can be no other way. And from Indigenous perspective, many Indigenous peoples will say that this is the fifth or the sixth world, depending on how you look at it, which tells us that we have lost worlds before. And that's something that modern world culture doesn't have much awareness of. They feel like it's just been one long continuum, and we might drop off this one particular cliff. But I'm going to say that we've had to go through some lessons about this before. And so in that moment, I was in particular trying to address the authority that this human construct called the Egyptian police were ready to impose upon an event that I felt really needed to happen. So I called upon the women to come together and to claim their authority, because for us in Indigenous cultures, and there's huge differences between Indigenous cultures, but there are many similarities. So when I'm speaking that way, I'm acknowledging as I've been around different Indigenous peoples all around the world, I'm referring to these similarities. But I'm going to say we pretty much across the board, we're saying that the woman is synonymous with life, and the woman is synonymous with earth. And so, when I was with the Kogi elders from the Sierra Nevadas in Colombia, they came up to New Mexico. And after meeting with them for 5 days, their final words to us were, "To the women we say, you must move and speak and act with the authority of the mother." Wow. And so that just like rang through my body, still does. "To the women we say, you must move and speak and act with the authority of the mother." And so I called the women together to claim that authority in that moment. Say, what we are here to do in this prayer that we wanted to make in that location at that time, which to me I think was a destiny. We acknowledge the true authority here, and we acknowledge that authority will subdue any and all authorities. And as it happened in that moment, they ended up having dinner with us, as I recall. So yeah, that just kind of came up out of the moment. And then how that relates to, I guess, the larger view. So I want to talk a little bit about, the title I gave for the segment that I wanted to contribute to this week of the 2020 Harmonic Convergence was to talk about protocol in approaching the sacred. And so maybe this is a good place to talk about that.
Perfect.
I see this place that we have been placed in as a free will construct. I mean, I always kind of laugh and say, well, I mean, look around. Clearly, anybody can do whatever the heck they can dream up around here because they're doing it. No matter how destructive, no matter who's being killed or whose way of life is being deprived, it just goes on. And so that's one way of expressing free will here. But we're getting ready to bump up, or we have bumped up, I'm going to say, against a natural barrier, which is you might be able to do whatever you can dream up here, but you might not be able to have life here, depending on what you choose to do with your dreams and what you dream up to do. So we're right at that. We're at that moment where we have to decide: are we just going to continue to say that any human can do whatever they can dream up, and go ahead and go off the cliff with ecological collapse and the collapse of our species, certainly, or is there something else that we could choose? Right. That's one way to look at our dilemma. And so so we have free will here, and so what that implies to me, and now I'm going to bring it back to the Lakota perspective. So I talk sometimes about the sacred hoop of life, and on that sacred hoop of life, every life form gets to have a seat, has the honor of having a seat on that circle. So flying ones, swimming ones, creepy crawling ones, four-legged ones, plant nation, and I'm going to say stones. A lot of people don't think stones are alive. They are. Mountains, they're alive. And so everybody gets to have their seat, including us, including the five-fingered ones, right? And so if everybody upholds their part of that sacred hoop, then life thrives, and the integrity of the hoop it gets stronger and deeper, right? But if any member doesn't uphold their part of that hoop, then the integrity of the hoop begins to fail. And so that's what I feel like we're seeing right now. And certainly with this mass extinction event that we're in, with these species disappearing, the integrity of the hoop is wobbling greatly. And I'm going to say I have to lay that a lot at our feet, the five-fingered ones, because we well, let me go back to the perfect case scenario. So in that sacred hoop, each member has a way of upholding and maintaining the integrity of its part of the hoop. Plants have their way. It's different from our way, which is different from a platypus's way, right? But everybody has their way. And so part of this free will construct, I'm going to say, also includes an aspect of sovereignty. So what do I mean by that? So sovereignty would be when each life form gets to have what it needs and is given the opportunity to fulfill its part of its perfect design for thriving life, its way of maintaining its part of the sacred hoop of life, right? And so that's what I'm going to call sovereignty, one aspect of our sovereignty here. So along with this free will, we have sovereignty. And so difficulty with human beings right now is acknowledging that basic principle to our construct, which is that we have to acknowledge the sovereignty of all beings. Not only of each other, which we're already seeing how problematic that is, and especially the deep and terrible sacrifice of George Floyd, which it was the right time for our hearts to be moved by such an act of atrocity, such a violence, to really see where we are as human beings, that such a thing could happen. It did. And so our sovereignty, we were very concerned about our sovereignty with each other, but I'm going to say that's only a small part of the picture. We have to be able to acknowledge the sovereignty of all beings. We're an interbeing, not just humanity, but the whole hoop of life. So that sovereignty then, there's another aspect of free will, and that would be consent. Okay, so it's not only about not killing everything, because to be honest, everything eats something else in constant knowledge. So I'm going to eat eventually. If I'm a vegetarian, I'm going to stop a carrot from doing it. I'm going to stop a carrot from going to seed. I'm going to interrupt its trajectory to have my life. So what an interesting setup we're in, huh? To me, what that says is that this setup is a lot about relationship. So if I all being sovereignty, and yet I also have to take your life in order to have my life, that means we come into a place of consent, consensual agreement about, yes, I'm going to take your life, I acknowledge you. So this is what part of what people in modern world observe indigenous culture. That's why there's elaborate prayer and ritual and offering around going for the hunt, because it's these beings as sovereign beings, and they're also considered elders to us who are here to teach how to be here, and yet we're going to go and take their life. So something has to happen in there. There has to be mutual agreement for that to happen. And so, we were talking last week, and I want to bring this piece up that really brought consent home to me. Here in the United States, we were affirming one of our Supreme Court justices, Justice Kavanaugh, and a woman came forward to describe her sexual from this man, and it was a hit display of playing, and the woman was really not heard. Justice Kavanaugh went on received that position for because of his backing. The woman who brought her story out in such a public way, she has to be moving, she has threats. I mean, it's pretty hideous. And so I saw what that made me woman of her consent world. How can actually get consent? Because the justice health system doesn't stand behind her. The economic system doesn't support behind her. She's working against all of these human systems and trying to have her place there, right? And in that way, isn't she at level always having to say, I better operate, I better play ball, or I might not have clothing and shelter. I will diminish my opportunities in clothing and shelter. And in many instances, she's left with, in a family that breaks up, she's left with the primary responsibility of raising children in that situation as well, and sometimes elders, and so it's tough. It's tough. And so in that circumstance, can she really give consent? And then I began to think, well, it's not just women. What about people of color? And then I began to think, well, it's not just people of color. What about people who are not part of binary gender system? Anyway, the circle just kept widening until I realized, I always use this image in this pyramid of a power over paradigm that modern world operates in which one being must have power over another in order to have food, clothing, and shelter. So it's not conducive to cooperation. It's not conducive to collaboration, which science is now figuring out. Survival of the fittest. It's survival of the most cooperative and collaborative. That's what we actually see in nature if we really observe long enough. So in that system, I'm saying even the ones who are supposed to be at the top of the food chain, the white male, they're also beginning to experience, hey, wait a minute. If I'm not part of that 1%, all the fruits of the labor all flow to that little tiny part at the top, then I'm left out even. So then I was asking myself, well, who's really giving consent around here anymore? Is anybody actually giving consent? It's like the system is just running on its own it's a runaway train that we're just on, and nobody's giving consent. And so that's when I really started thinking about this. And this is like my main message today, is to say, our consent is a super deep and powerful gift. If this construct is in fact a free will construct, if part of the law of that free will construct is that sovereignty has to be honored, then our giving our consent is key. It's a very deep spiritual power that has been given to us. And yet this power over paradigm system has talked us out of it almost completely. We don't even notice all the things that we are giving consent to by default. as I was pointing out, just with my birth, did I give consent to be given a social security number so that I could be used for collateral by the United States government for the rest of my life? No. Did I give consent to have immunization shots and such? No. Did I give consent to, having a birth certificate? No. Did I give consent to be put in a school where I'm indoctrinated into this power over paradigm way? No. So for right from the very where that critical piece of consent is not acknowledged for most human beings. And so we kind of go along giving consent by default over and over and over again. But I'm going to say that spiritual law says that when one being overcomes and overrides the free will and the consent of another, there is an accounting that must come due.
Right.
There is something that has to be balanced out there, that has to be corrected. So one of the things that I've been saying in my talks in the world is to say, it's really important for each one of us to reclaim our consent. What do we give consent to? And I think part of the reason that we don't think about our consent so much is because we think, well, it doesn't matter whether I give my consent or not. They're just going to do it anyway. They don't care about my consent. But the difference is when we don't, when we declare, I do not give my consent to X, and whoever it is, whatever it is, comes over and crosses that line, it engages spiritual law. And spiritual law says an accounting must come due for that. So it's really important for us to have awareness of what is that moment of where I should be being asked about my consent, and then do I give my consent, or am I withholding my consent? So I'm really encouraging us to really pay attention to that line. And so in regards to this upcoming event, which is really the reason why I accepted this opportunity to speak to you here today, about us, making contact. We're going to make contact, right? We want to bring those spaceships in and let us know that we're not alone here. I really want to say, and this is where the protocol of approaching the sacred comes in. So indigenous cultures. My daughter lately has been proposing to me that maybe we didn't just show up with all this knowledge of how to be deeply in a thriving life paradigm. We went through some trial and error ourselves coming up.
Right.
And so we learned the hard way maybe sometimes. And so if you see our ceremonies, one of the things that certainly in American culture and probably many cultures around the world is we notice that there's a lot of protocol, right? And so people who aren't accustomed to our ways or even to that scene, they're trying to be careful, hopefully, to say, man, I don't want to do the wrong thing here, because it seems like you got a way to do everything. You're supposed to move this way and never this way. You're supposed to do this and never that. So it's kind of like a little bit like walking on eggshells. Well, the reason we have those protocols is because we have some experience with inviting in what we want to come in that would be helpful, that would be harmonious, that would serve the entire sacred hoop of thriving life and not do any harm. And then we want to hold out anything that would interrupt. So if we're going to create something so powerful in ceremony, because ceremony is very powerful, then we want to be mindful of who we're asking to come in. And so I feel that one of the handicaps of modern world paradigm, which is guiding the majority of humans on the planet, maybe I'll say, or certainly the ones that it is guiding are having the most impact on the rest of the planet and us, is that we don't have a lot of experience outside of our own intellect. Intellect is the primary tool for knowing anything as a human being, whereas in indigenous cultures, that's the least reliable way of knowing anything. It's not that we don't need it, but it's the least reliable. Our other modalities, actually human beings have a very broad spectrum of ways of knowing. So that's why we know through dance. That's why we know through song. Those are actually much deeper ways of knowing about that whole hoop and how to be a part of it. Intellect can't do that quite so well. I always say, try having a romance with intellect only. You know, it's not that much fun, right? So I guess what I want to say is that it's good for modern world to begin to break out of this reductionist thought processes, out of the scientific, out of intellectual endeavor. I think we have to do that. All these indigenous cultures who are able to maintain deep sustainability for thousands of years, they didn't do it through intellect. So that tells me we've got to open up and branch out. And I feel like we're in sort of a really big period of that. And I'm going to say Unify's work maybe has a lot to do with that. And so that's important. But we have to have a certain level of maturity to not want to just be poking at phenomenon. Ooh, did you see what just happened there? Oh, and if I go to Machu Picchu, ooh, did you see what just happened there? It's like, I want to say to people who are like, you know, globetrotting to power spots, I want to say, do you believe it now? Like, are you convinced that this is real, that those things happen? And that's where, you know, when we stop just treating it as a sport, and I'm not saying everybody here is doing that, but I have definitely witnessed that. And it's all part of this process of moving out of intellect. You know, do we see that it's real? And if it's real, then how do we really want to incorporate that as a discipline in our life? So I know I need to wrap up here. I'm just going to say that, so with the upcoming event, what I'm going to propose is we want to be very specific about who we're calling in.
Yeah.
We don't just want to have an experience of everybody showing up. And to me, it's really important, if we're going to make a call as such a large collective of humanity, that we're very specific. This is what we're calling in. We want to call in that which serves the very highest possibility for life and light and love. And we are not interested in entertaining anything else. That's a really important part of what we propose here to do on the 14th.
I think that you bring up such a relevant and deep point, is that how we prepare ourselves and how we show up, and the clarity of our intention is important, rather than just chasing some type of peak experience phenomenon.
Yes.
And what I'm also feeling, I'm wondering if you're willing, and I know we talked a little bit about this earlier, if you're willing to share a prayer with us right now that will help us get to that place of clarity and light and love, so that we truly are prepared and clear for the goodness to come.
Yes. So, Wakantanka, Dunkashila, Unshimaka, Shema, Shiche, holy people all around. It's me, Wiakpa, Najimwi, coming before you on this holy day, Pitukile, Wopila, Ahyehe. Thank you for making this creation so beautiful. Thank you for making me so beautiful. Thank you for making Patrick so beautiful. Thank you for making all of our relatives so beautiful. I want to say thank you for the beautiful possibilities for co-creation and for thriving life paradigm to grow and expand, and to come into harmony and balance. Right now, it feels like we are really struggling with understanding how to do that, why to do that, and also to even have the vision of how beautiful all of our creativity could be if we could keep it within the laws of this construct. So I ask for your help, for each one of us, with that at this time. Right now, my relatives propose that we all come together and reach out to the star beings. And so I want to acknowledge that long, long history between the Mother Earth, between five-fingered ones, and the star being helpers of life, light, and love, who have been with us and have been watching over us and have been co-creating with us for since the beginning. I just call upon you, and I call upon all those who are listening to connect in that sacred way, in that way that is in order and balance and harmony. We do not give our consent to any interference to the thriving life plan on Mother Earth. We do not give our consent to anything that is helping us to create disharmony and to further the death wave that has arisen in this place, in our own minds and hearts. We leave that road now. We leave that road now and move into beauty again, move into harmony. Show us each one how to be a very deep liver, deepest liver that has ever been as human being with this Mother Earth, as this Mother Earth, for this Mother Earth. So all of the holy helpers, Creator, Mother Earth herself, I ask that you hold a beautiful, safe container for our prayer to acknowledge all of the star being helpers that have been there. And let this time serve as a way of helping us to remember who we are, where we are, how it is, what this construct is, and how we can move in it in a way that is deeply fulfilling, not only for ourselves, but for all life here. Guide and direct and hold this prayer, and let no harm come to any part of our Mother Earth, to life, to love, to light, for anyone. We just ask that you hold us in that way all the way through, and let that medicine that we so deeply need come and be here with us at this time. Oh, Dakwe Vayasini.
Oh. Thank you so much for that prayer.
My honor.
Pat, I would love for you to share how people can find you and find your work and connect with you and learn about the mission that you're on.
Well, I do have a website. Don't spend a lot of time there. So there is some things there. It's at patmccabe.net. patmccabe.net. But also, I have had a number of talks recorded. So if you Google Pat McCabe or Woman Stand Shining, a lot of what I really know that Spirit wanted me to come and say at this time is there. So I encourage you to look that up as well.
Beautiful. Pat, thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you on the front lines of prayer again one day.
I have a feeling that will come to pass.
Right.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you. Bye. Wow, that was super deep for me, and mostly because I've prayed with Pat before, on top of Mount Sinai, and this prayer that she led us through really reminded me that we are nature, and we are earth, and we are the mountains. And I honestly am having a hard time talking right now. I feel like very like earth. And I'm also feeling the spirit that awoke inside me from that prayer, and the kind of like the dance between that spirit and the earth inside me as we prepare over the next couple days, the next few days, for this big global meditation that's going to be happening on the 14th. And so I'm going to be logging off now. We have Cujo up next, and in between this interview and that interview, we're going to have a meditation happening. So thanks for logging on. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys soon. Peace.
Welcome to the Harmonic Convergence 2020. I invite you to take in these beautiful images of Mother Earth. When you're ready, close your eyes and allow these sound waves take you on an inward journey. Connect with your breath and start to deepen your breath, guiding your breath all the way into your lower abdomen, expanding the belly, and exhaling fully. Take a few deep cleansing breaths. Feeling the rise and fall of your chest and abdomen. Let your exhale be slow and long, sending a signal to your nervous system that you are safe. Imagine you are inside of a bubble of light. Your own safe and sacred space. Allow yourself to become aware of any tension, tightness, anything that you are currently going through that causes you pain or difficulty. Simply seeing it for what it is. Imagine you are embracing yourself like a mother embracing her child. Holding yourself with love and compassion. Allow these sound waves be like a healing flow moving right through you, releasing any tension or tightness, suffering or pain. If you so choose, expand the space of your awareness into the world, towards everyone else who is currently going through a difficult time. Then slowly bring yourself back into the here and the now, deepening your breath. Welcome back.
Hello and welcome. Thanks for staying tuned here. The Harmonic Convergence. Today we're talking about move with nature, moving from despair to nurture. And with us is a really incredible man that I had the really great privilege of being with up in Peru, in the Tawantinsuyu up there. We climbed Machu Picchu, Huayna Picchu. He's a medicine man from the Andes. He's deep in the rediscovery and the reawakening of this Andino wisdom of the Tawantinsuyu. And his name is Cucho, Juan de Dios Cucho. Thank you so much for being with us. Hello, you have a great background.
Sí, muy buenos días. En estos días esplendorosos de luz y sobre todo en una apertura tan importante en este tiempo, en estos días, en esta semana que estamos pasando. Vamos a calificarlo, decir que este es un gran portal, un super portal para iniciar una serie de eventos, tanto en el aspecto humano, en el aspecto de la naturaleza y del cosmos. Porque después del solsticio de invierno, el eclipse y otros eventos, y el que viene en esta semana, fin de semana, la luna llena, se apertura un espacio muy especial para poder reflexionar, poder alinearnos en esta nueva situación tan extraordinaria que la vida nos presenta. En ese sentido, desde aquí, desde este lugar mágico, desde este lugar de poder de Machu Picchu, deseamos compartir, ya que como nunca, este lugar también por la tranquilidad que ha tenido en este espacio, nos muestra un espacio diferente, una manifestación muy especial en cuanto podemos aprovechar para compartir en base a las necesidades, en base a esta nueva situación tan especial que se nos presenta.
Sí, pues así es, estos cambios tan grandes que vienen, ¿no? Necesitamos todo el apoyo natural así. Y pues ahí que usted está viviendo en aguas calientes desde hace muchos años, ahí en las faldas de Machu Picchu, digamos. Y me gustaría saber en qué sentido usted nota cómo, sobre todo en este aspecto ancestral, se lleva el conocimiento del movimiento de la naturaleza y cómo se puede uno respetar así de la manera que está hablando usted también de las estrellas, del movimiento de la luna. Entonces, ¿de qué pistas nos dejaron los ancestrales y de qué manera usted las está descifrando, ¿no? Del movimiento de la naturaleza?
Básicamente, dentro de uno de los aspectos fundamentales de la cosmovisión del hombre andino, había un patrón que se llama el buen vivir, o el Munaycausay, el Allincausay. Este mandato o principio de la civilización andina nos llevó a comprender integralmente un todo en relación macro, las tres pachas, el Hanajpacha, el Caipacha y el Ucupacha, donde ese principio se traducía o se traduce en el cumplimiento, en el comportamiento, cómo relacionarse con esos tres aspectos tan fundamentales en el ser humano: la laboriosidad, el trabajo, luego viene el amor y luego viene el conocimiento. Entonces, el cumplimiento de esos tres aspectos del hombre en relación a la naturaleza armonizaba completamente y nos daba una gran opción para poder organizar, hacer o ponerse en la frecuencia de las necesidades para resolver muchos aspectos. Entonces, simplemente con estos, el cumplimiento sí o sí como principio de estos tres aspectos, que era trabajar, amar y la sabiduría, el conocimiento, nos llevaba a entender muchos aspectos profundamente en lo que ahora el sistema o el pensamiento occidental lo ha tomado como una opción o una condición. O sea, dentro de la libertad que nos da la vida en estos momentos, o hace 100 años, o hace 200, 300 años, hemos venido conviviendo con esa disciplina, pensando que eso era la libertad. Pero la libertad no es condicionada en nuestro pensamiento. La libertad se obtiene por un principio, una disciplina y responsabilidad. En ese sentido, lo que ahora nos toca para alinearnos en esta frecuencia de cambios y transformaciones es asumir la vida con una profunda responsabilidad en las cosas, en lo que nos desenvolvemos cotidianamente. Y eso nos llevará a armonizar, eso nos llevará a poder tener una visión en lo que hagamos, en lo que nos desenvolvamos, y en especial dentro de la práctica espiritual. Si realmente nosotros queremos comprender profundamente esta gran opción que la vida y la vida de los seres humanos está percibiendo este momento especial, entonces tenemos que asumirlo con mucha responsabilidad. Entonces la responsabilidad consolida aspectos propios del ser humano: la mente, los pensamientos, los sentimientos, y nos vamos encaminando a recibir y alinearnos en frecuencias especiales, y eso podemos transmitirlo a todos nuestros seres queridos, a nuestra comunidad y especialmente a la humanidad, que en estos momentos requerimos de esa paz, de esa tranquilidad, para repensar, para restaurar, para reconstruir muchos aspectos de la percepción. Las actividades que realizamos. En ese sentido, el buen vivir, o alincauce, o vivir espléndidamente, vivir profundamente, nos puede llevar a retomar nuevamente muchas cosas que nos hemos olvidado. Y aquí está en nuestras manos, está en la naturaleza propia de nuestra dimensión, está en la naturaleza del cosmos, está en la naturaleza profunda de cada ser humano, que nos toca a partir de este momento abrirlo, todos esos canales, todas esas percepciones, esas visiones, para poder reorientarnos en la vida.
Sí, y ahora usted está hablando también de esta paz, ¿no? De esta tranquilidad para poder hacer ese análisis, para poder como afinar el instrumento para ser como sensible a estas frecuencias, a estas energías, ¿no? Pero para la gente, por ejemplo, que vive en las ciudades, para la gente que está allá afuera en el mundo, que está mucha gente, hay mucha información ahora, mucha información bastante devastadora, que si es el clima, que si es la pandemia, que si es los militares. Entonces, ¿de qué manera podemos como hacer esta transferencia desde este desespero a un lugar de cuidado, de un cuidado propio, un cuidado a hacer las cosas bien, ¿no?
Sí, creo que lo importante en el ser humano, tanto los que estamos cerca o agrupados en las grandes ciudades, como el que está en la naturaleza, necesitamos limpiar todo el ruido mental, limpiar la mente, entrar a otras frecuencias vibracionales de lo cotidiano que recibimos. O sea, recibimos una serie de bombardeos, especialmente por los medios de comunicación, y lamentablemente nuestros hermanos, hermanas en el mundo, vivimos de esta herramienta. Entonces, tenemos que alinear, hacer de que por un momento el ruido externo, el ruido de afuera, no puede entrar a nosotros por un momento. Esta es una práctica ancestral que en todas las civilizaciones se ha dado. Entonces, una vez que calmamos la mente, calmamos los pensamientos, entonces saltamos a una cosa propia del ser humano, que es nuestro corazón, que son nuestros sentimientos, que son esas fuerzas profundas por el cual se mueve el hombre. Entonces, esta práctica de hacer nuestras limpiezas personales, nuestras limpiezas mentales, físicas, energéticas, es fácil. Todas las creencias que tenemos hasta el momento tienen una orientación. Y lo más fácil, recogerse, disciplinarse por un momento, prendiendo una vela, prendiendo un incienso, una meditación profunda en el aspecto de lo que es la esencia de la meditación, sin tomar ninguna enseñanza de una escuela o de algún maestro o alguien que nos orientó, sino propiamente de nosotros, crear un tipo de meditación propia, auscultando, penetrando a lo más profundo de nuestro ser y encontrando esas respuestas que ahora las necesitamos. Como dicen, cuando hay una pregunta, no hay que ir muy lejos. Cuando hay una pregunta, la respuesta está detrás de esa pregunta. Y así podemos ahorrarnos tiempo, espacio, economía, etcétera, para poder darle continuidad a nuestra limpieza y purificación e ubicarnos en estos momentos cruciales de nuestra situación. En ese sentido, el mensaje para los hermanos, hermanas, inclusive para nosotros mismos, es adoptar esa disciplina de volver a nosotros mismos hacia ese ingrediente fundamental que es nuestro centro, nuestra semilla, que muchos lo identifican como el corazón. Sí, el corazón de aquí y el corazón de tu centro. Ahí está tu semilla, ahí está la esencia de cada ser humano, de cada ser viviente.
Me gustaría también, Cucho, si nos pudieras hablar un poquito sobre este concepto de Aini.
El Aini, en la convivencia social de nuestro mundo andino, amazónico, altiplánico y de la costa, es una práctica ancestral que representa la reciprocidad. Socialmente es el hombre con el hombre con la naturaleza, y energéticamente igual, el hombre con el hombre. Entonces, ¿qué significa la reciprocidad? No está preparado, sino vibrar. Vibrar en las dimensiones de alegría, de felicidad, de abundancia. Entonces, cuando tenemos eso, tenemos que dar para que siga viniendo, para que sigamos recibiendo, porque si no compartimos, se estanca y comienza a crecer y cristalizarse nuestro ego. Entonces ahí comienzan a venir los problemas, la desigualdad. En ese sentido, el Aini es un principio fundamental también que desarrollaron nuestros ancestros, y podemos llevarlo a la práctica. Ahora que hay un desequilibrio, entonces la responsabilidad es cómo nivelarlo, cómo hacer que la humanidad alcance esa dimensión de tranquilidad. Cuando hay reciprocidad, cuando se nivelan las cosas, entonces tenemos opción a que que nuestra vida misma pueda desarrollarse en armonía. Entonces, el Aini es un concepto profundo de reciprocidad entre el hombre, la naturaleza y lo sagrado también.
Sí, también me hace pensar en este concepto que nos explicó un poquito en nuestro viaje a Perú, que es el shami, 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 saiwa, 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 ¿no?
Exacto, exacto. Dentro de la práctica espiritual andina, traducido, por ejemplo, en el concepto de estos momentos, la meditación, en nuestro caso, era práctico. Esa comunión directa entre lo que es los pachas, el cosmos, la dimensión de la naturaleza y la dimensión de este mundo que representamos nosotros, ¿no? Entonces, esa correspondencia se orientaba en los dos centros, en el centro de nuestra galaxia y en el centro de nuestra Tierra. Entonces, ubicando estos dos vórtices, uno llamaba y jalaba, no tanto así con la intención, sino con la extensión y la profundidad que tienen esas dimensiones. Entonces, desde el centro de la galaxia se jalaba la luz, se jalaba las vibraciones, se jalaba la energía hacia el centro, hacia el corazón de nuestra Tierra, de nuestro hogar, de nuestro planeta. Y así recíprocamente, con esa misma extensión, se jalaba desde el corazón, desde lo más profundo de la sabiduría que se guarda en ese vórtice, se enviaba nuevamente hacia el centro de la galaxia. Y así sucesivamente en esa práctica uno entraba en comunión invocando estos dos mantras poderosos, que era desde el centro del cosmos, de la galaxia, se jalaba invocando Shami, 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 Shami. Y cuando llegabas al centro de la Tierra, al corazón de nuestro hogar, de nuestro planeta, al corazón de la sabiduría, esa fuerza se combinaba, esa fuerza se interrelacionaba, y con esa fuerza también se invocaba el Saiwa, 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 hacia el centro nuevamente de la galaxia. Y así sucesivamente, con esa práctica de jalar y enviar, el ser humano tomaba conciencia, tomaba fuerza, tomaba tranquilidad, y esa fuerza hacía que esa fuerza de conciencia cósmica y telúrica hacía que llegue al centro de tu ser, tocaba tu semilla, y así particularmente podías engrandecer tu ser, tu vida, tus energías, tus vibraciones. Entonces es una práctica que lo puedes hacer en cualquier lugar y en cualquier momento. Shami, Shami, Shami. Saiwa, Saiwa, Saiwa para fortalecer. Shami, Shami para bendecir tu ser. Shami, Shami para engrandecer esa conexión de la conciencia cósmica con la conciencia propia del ser humano. E igualmente, el Saiwa Saiwa es recibir grandes sabidurías, fuerza, energía, desde el corazón, desde el núcleo, desde el centro, desde el nido de ese gran símbolo que es el Amaru o la serpiente, quien te elevaba con una especie de un Lingli o un Kundalini, como conocen, y te reforzaba totalmente tu integridad. Entonces es una práctica ancestral muy interesante que se puede hacer en cualquier momento, donde estés. En este caso, por ejemplo, estamos en las grandes ciudades, un poco difícil, entonces preparas tu espacio, un espacio de 1 metro por 1 metro, 2 metros por 2 metros, lo proteges, un vaso de agua, una vela con el fuego, y comienzas a trabajar con este instrumento tan especial que es el Shami Shami Saiwa Saiwa.
Sí, es una práctica muy, muy poderosa. Así se puede hacer también de pie, sentado, tumbado, de cualquier manera. Así se pueden. Es totalmente. Es muy poderoso. A mí me gusta mucho hacer eso y le agradezco mucho la enseñanza. A ver, así que I hope everyone's doing this at home. Otra curiosidad que creo que sería lindo de escuchar es compartir un poquito. Nosotros estuvimos haciendo un peregrinaje con usted allá en Machu Picchu y en Huayna Picchu, y una de las curiosidades fue que nuestro grupo, cuando mediante que subíamos al monte, teníamos nuestras pausas. Entonces
Sí.
hacíamos un descanso, una meditación, unos cantos quizás, y la gente pasaba así rápido, rápido, rápido. Pero nosotros llegamos así en el momento justo y bajamos en el momento justo. Me gustaría, por favor, que pudieras hablar sobre esto, y también si pudieras incluir el conocimiento del chakiri, chakiri, chakiriri. Así.
Muy bien. Una práctica de purificación es el desplazarse, caminar en las montañas. Y con el objetivo de alcanzar la cima, porque son los lugares de mayor purificación, son los lugares con un potencial energético de alta dimensión. Llegar a la punta o al tope de las montañas. Sin embargo, en el proceso de esta peregrinación o conexión con la montaña, hay ciertos ejercicios, pautas para llegar, como se dice, preparados, para llegar limpios a conectarse con el espíritu de la montaña. Por ejemplo, cada paso que uno da en el proceso es hacerlo con conciencia, tu movimiento. Decirle a tu ser, aquí estás aquí ahora. Entonces, cuando tú pones el pie izquierdo a la montaña, al peldaño, a las escaleras, el pie izquierdo siempre con el corazón, con tu esencia. Decirle, aquí, ahora, aquí, ahora, Kaipi, Kuna, Kaipi, Kuna, y así sucesivamente vas avanzando y tu esfuerzo físico se traduce en conexión energética con el valor, con la grandeza de lo que representa una montaña. En ese sentido, entras a otro ejercicio. Una vez que ya te has conectado con la naturaleza, entras a otro ejercicio, que es contigo mismo, y se llama el no kankani. Cada paso en la ascensión o en el desplazamiento en la montaña, comienza a repetir, no kankani, no kankani. O sea, yo soy en la profundidad de mi ser, yo soy en la profundidad de mi mente, yo soy en la profundidad de las virtudes y cualidades de cada uno, no tanto así del ego. Y luego sigues en la práctica de ascensión y te pregunta, ¿quién soy? O viene la conexión con la pregunta profunda, ¿quién soy? Pinkangi, ¿quién eres? Sigue el proceso de desplazamiento y la respuesta llega y te dice, eso eres. O si encuentras algo, eso es para ti. Eso es para ti. Sichu starinki, anchaywan kepaku. Entonces, estos tres conceptos te llevan. Yo soy, ¿qué quieres? Y si encuentras algo, eso es para ti. Disfrútalo, úsalo, trabájalo. Porque cada ser humano en particular tiene un camino que te enseña, un camino que te abre, un camino que te orienta. Entonces, cuando tú llegas a la cima de una montaña, es la conclusión de ese proceso de peregrinación. El aquí, el ahora, quién eres, qué quieres, y finalmente, si has encontrado algo, eso es para usted, eso es para ti mismo. Entonces es una práctica que se utiliza cuando uno va a peregrinar, subir a las montañas. Y aquí en este lugar de Machu Picchu, tiene una particularidad interesante los apus o el espíritu de la montaña, producto de la cualidad de cada una de estas. O sea, me refiero en el material que están las montañas, que están ahí, abunda lo que es el cristal de cuarzo. Y el cristal de cuarzo le da una propiedad extraordinaria. E igual la localización de este área, geográficamente hablando, es una zona de ceja de selva, donde constantemente se produce la lluvia. Entonces, el agua ayuda al crecimiento de los cristales que están dentro de las montañas. Por esa razón que cuando visitamos Machu Picchu, lo hayamos visitado 2, 3, 4, 5 veces tal vez, jamás vamos a encontrarlo igual. Siempre va a tener sus características, sus particularidades, de acuerdo a la frecuencia vibracional con el cual nos presentamos cada ser humano dentro o ante este vórtex energético llamado Machu Picchu ahora. Entonces, es un lugar energéticamente, vibracionalmente, de poder muy particular en relación a todas las áreas del mundo andino. Y hoy por hoy, con este despertar, con esta pausa que la vida nos ha otorgado, ya aquí en el valle de Machu Picchu se siente como la transmisión desde ese vórtex que estamos tan cerca, la transmisión se alinea y te invita a dejar todo lo que nos habían bombardeado, dado durante meses. Nos invita a cambiar de mentalidad, de sentimientos, nos invita a caminar de otra manera. Hay tantas cosas profundas que podemos hablar y compartir sobre Machu Picchu.
Y pues este momento lo quiero tomar para también decir que este viaje a Machu Picchu es un viaje que se puede hacer, que se podrá hacer de nuevo. Y yo por mí no hay mejor guía que Cucho. Y entonces quiero tomar esta oportunidad, por favor, Cucho, si nos podrías hablar un poco de Intihuasi, de lo que representa su escuela espiritual en ese gran lugar.
El andar por estos lugares, por este campo de poder de Machu Picchu, y las oportunidades que nos dio el espíritu de esta gran montaña Machu Picchu, de entrar, por ejemplo, al mundo mágico, al mundo luminoso, al mundo de la naturaleza, nos permitió entrar en un proceso de reflexión profunda del por qué estamos aquí. Y en base a eso, el mensaje de la montaña es que como guardián espiritual de este lugar, se tiene que reservar un espacio para la gente, para nuestros hermanos, hermanas que llegan a este lugar, crear un espacio como una antesala para ir con las condiciones necesarias hacia las montañas, porque la localización de Machu Picchu está encima de las montañas. En ese contexto, el mensaje fue reservar un espacio, un centro, donde previamente podamos compartir el conocimiento, la sabiduría y un poco la tranquilidad, no tanto así preparación, sino la tranquilidad para sintonizar con la frecuencia de los poderes, de las fuerzas que emanan de este lugar. En ese sentido, el Centro Espiritual Intihuasi, con más de 20 años de existencia, en la medida de las grandes posibilidades, los aportes de todos los hermanos que han llegado aquí, lo hemos materializado en hacer espacios de hospedaje, de restaurante, espacios de meditación, espacios para las prácticas de rituales, de medicina, masajes. Entonces, eso es lo que hemos podido concretizar. Entonces, queda abierto el centro espiritual, queda abierto como un corazón para recibirlos a los hermanos, hermanas que lleguen a Machu Picchu, pasen por nuestro lugar que los espera siempre con los brazos abiertos. Intihuasi es la casa del sol, es la casa que representa la vida, la luz, el amor, la comprensión, la paz, la tranquilidad. Queremos traducirlo con vuestra ayuda, queridos hermanos, hermanas, y esto se haga realidad y que sigan dando para que las futuras generaciones puedan tener un espacio donde puedan llegar y alinearse, recibir la tranquilidad previamente a subir a las montañas del Machu Picchu.
Same, and also to have that place to integrate as well after you come down. It's absolutely amazing. This is a spiritual school like no other, and so we're really happy to have also Kucha as a part of our Aniwa family, and you can find out more. There's a link underneath. You can find out a lot more about his work, about his place, and about the possibilities of collaboration right there. So thank you so much, Kucho, for sharing that. Tengo una pregunta sobre en este momento donde hay una gran pausa a nivel mundial. No ha sido una pausa elegida. Entonces, esta pausa ha sido como... ha venido con una serie de conflictos y de confusión, digamos. Quería pues preguntarte ¿cuál es alguna intuición, algún consejo que se puede dar o alguna percepción que hayas tenido sobre el significado de esta pausa y la manera en la que podemos andar adelante con cuidado?
Muy bien. Creo que todos esos ingredientes de energía pesada, de todas el lenguaje negativo que ha llegado en estos últimos, o sea, se ha sintetizado ese lenguaje pesado y ha confundido a la humanidad. Creo que alguien está sacando ventaja de todo esto. Hay fuerzas oscuras que están tratando de quitarle ese gusto de buen vivir a la humanidad. Entonces, ahora más que nunca, tenemos que ponernos a la vanguardia. ¿Qué significa esto? Canalizar buenas intenciones, canalizar la alegría, la felicidad, canalizar la tranquilidad. O sea, todos los ingredientes de un aspecto de cambiar todo ese lenguaje pesado. Porque caso contrario, si la humanidad continúa con esta presión de esa naturaleza, entonces significa que alguien está aprovechando las buenas vibraciones e intenciones del buen vivir del ser humano para canalizar y seguir haciendo que crezca esas fuerzas negativas, esas fuerzas de energías pesadas que va a llevar a un desenlace, no quiero decir fatal, cruel, donde va a debilitar al ser humano y nos vamos a ver disminuidos de actuar en convivencia, de actuar en comunidad, de resolver nuestras cosas conjuntamente en bienestar del ser humano. Por eso siempre volvamos a ese lenguaje de tranquilidad, de paz, amor y armonía. Es la única posibilidad de luz, es la única posibilidad que puede hacer que nuevamente el ser humano dé ese salto cualitativo. O sea, vayamos y nos orientemos hacia el sobre el ser, ¿no? O sea, salir de nosotros mismos para jalar, canalizar cosas especiales, profundas en favor del ser humano, en favor de las necesidades que ahora está agobiando en general en todos los lugares del mundo. Entonces, mucha paz, mucha tranquilidad, mucha alegría, sobre todo en el corazón, en la mente, buenos pensamientos en lo más profundo del ser, y movimiento, y comer bien, dormir bien, para que se cumpla ese concepto de nuestra cosmovisión que queremos compartirlo al mundo, el fin causa, el buen vivir, o el vivir espléndido, espléndidamente regocijados con esta gran oportunidad que nos da la vida en estos momentos tan especiales.
Sí, gracias, Cucho. Te quería, en el poco tiempo que te llevo conociendo, así pues me ha resultado muy fascinante esta capacidad de observación que tienes en el entorno y de apreciación también de las cosas pequeñas. Me gustaría pues preguntarte la importancia de esta capacidad de observar y también cualquier como conocimiento ancestral que hayas podido ver que se da gracias a la observación en tu lugar.
La grandeza de la naturaleza, la grandeza del ser humano, la grandeza del cosmos, del universo, de los multiversos, etc. Siempre al ser humano lo lleva a un proceso de reflexión. Y en el caso de la experiencia propia, la práctica espiritual aquí, en este lugar que estamos rodeados, en su mayor porcentaje de naturaleza, cuando nos llevó a la meditación profunda en el entorno de este campo de poder de Machu Picchu, nos orientó a una práctica muy interesante para recibir algo de ella. No nosotros ir con el pensamiento, o con el deseo, o con la intención, sino primero con la purificación y luego entramos a la práctica de la concentración. La concentración nos invita a observar sin tocar nada. Y ahí hay un resultado, un mensaje, algo que uno necesita. Entonces, esta práctica nos lleva a ubicarnos o encontrar algún ingrediente propio para cada uno, sin jalar nada, sin jalar luces, sin jalar a las deidades, sin jalar ángeles, sin jalar sonidos, sin jalar colores, sin tocar absolutamente nada, ni las montañas, ni las plantas, ni los animales, ni la luz, nada, hasta que uno con esa práctica de concentración y observación llega a encontrar, a conseguir algo para uno mismo. Eso es lo que nos ha enseñado y en eso se basa muchos de los grandes mensajes, muchos de los grandes conocimientos y sabiduría que la naturaleza de este campo de poder de Machu Picchu nos ha orientado y nos ha ido entregando. Y esa entrega se ha ido compartiendo con todos los peregrinos, con todos los hermanos que lleguen a este lugar. Entonces, es una invitación sencilla para ponerlo en práctica, este aspecto de esta meditación, ¿no? Que es la concentración y la observación. Y siempre sin tocar nada hasta que naturalmente venga a uno lo que realmente necesita.
Sí. Y eso lleva pues a una pregunta que es un poco la curiosidad que yo enfrento pues casi todos los días, que es esta danza entre la quietud y la acción. Porque el mundo en este momento está pues como que haciendo una gran transformación, ¿no? de tantos ángulos que están como dándose todos a la vez. Y en la vida de uno también, luego está lo global, lo personal, y hay una urgencia en estos tiempos. Y me gustaría pues saber cuál es el equilibrio ahí entre el actuar porque ahora es el momento y el como retirarse y resguardarse porque es lo que uno necesita.
Sí, creo que este aspecto está en relación al sujeto y el objeto. Por ejemplo, cuando uno se pone al frente, como estamos haciendo en este momento de compartir, en el caso mío, yo no me pongo como un gran conocedor, no me pongo como un gran conferencista, o quiero que aprendan de mí algo, sino esa relación de sujeto y objeto, o sea, entre uno y otro, tiene que ser correspondiente para que ambos podamos comprender la profundidad de un tema específico que estamos tocando. O sea, que nazca de ese compartir, de ese diálogo, de esa comunicación, que se sobreponga un lenguaje psicológico, un lenguaje de sentir, un lenguaje de profundidad que nos encamine a entender ambos lo que se está compartiendo. Entonces, ese tiempo y espacio tenemos que hacerlo que se unifique, que se integre para sacar un resultado. Porque si no, alguien va a escuchar algo de estos mensajes y va a decir, wow, y ese es un maestro, es un chamán, es un gurú, qué interesante. Entonces ahí ya comienza a crecer tal vez el ego, tal vez se comienza a desvirtuar, desorientarse en muchas cosas. Entonces es muy importante, cuando hablamos de esos dos espacios, es hacer que se integren y haya un profundo entendimiento al respecto.
Sí, sí. Es un tiempo que requiere pues mucha disciplina de nuestra parte y mucha evolución. Así que muchas gracias por todo este tiempo que nos ha dado y la atención. Si tiene algunas últimas palabras para nuestros oyentes, nuestros participantes aquí en esta discusión.
Sí, solamente agradecer este espacio, siempre recordando que nada está cerrado, nada está dicho, la vida es siempre y en este momento tan especial, invitarles a que este fin de semana, esta luna llena, podamos trabajar con un poco de responsabilidad para poder canalizar muchos aspectos, tanto colectivos como particulares, individuales, y así poder ser parte de la comunidad que reoriente en esta nueva situación. Y siempre con alegría, con amor, siempre con la luz, cristales de estas grandes montañas. Les entrego todo mi amor, les entrego todas las energías de luz para que sigamos adelante. Muchas gracias desde Machu Picchu. Hayaya.
Hayaya. Hailey. Muchas gracias.
Hayaya.
All right, everybody. We'll keep watching. We have more incredible people coming to share their wisdom, their understanding with us here at the Harmonic Convergence 2020. Thank you. Hayaya.
Alabado al gran creador y formador del universo, siempre se dan las gracias. Gracias, oh corazón del cielo. Gracias, oh corazón de la tierra. Gracias, oh corazón del agua. Gracias, oh corazón del fuego. Oh cuatro vientos que respiramos el corazón de nuestra vida. Te damos siempre las gracias. Te pedimos el permiso para que nos abras el camino en las cuatro direcciones. Gracias, abuelos y abuelas Balanguichea. Oh Palomá, dador de vida. Gracias, abuelos y abuelas Balamacacho Mijá. Gracias por cuidarnos, por protegernos en la caída del Padre Sol. Gracias, abuelo Oig Balam, abuelo Kakishaja, manantial, nacimiento de las aguas, donde nacen, surgen el agua que corre en nuestras venas, nuestra medicina, el sanador de nuestra vida. Gracias, abuelo Mahukuta Sunuña, postrados en el ocaso del viento, donde recibimos el alimento sagrado de toda la producción que nos da la Madre Tierra. Gracias por darnos todo lo necesario, el alimento sagrado, el alimento espiritual. nuestro vestuario, el producto de nuestro trabajo. Gracias te damos. Te pedimos por nuestros hermanos menos válidos, que no tienes un pie, un brazo, un ojo, que no haga falta, la abundancia que haya siempre en todos los hogares.
We've woken up to a new reality, and I'm happy to be connected to all of you. Everything is connected. What happens in China, New York, and Italy affects us all. Why do we have to suffer to recognize how connected we are? We can empower and enhance our connection by living in harmony with nature. Connection is all around us, everywhere. Networks of underground shared economies where ecosystems flourish without greed.
Mycelium that can grow out even just this big can have trillions, literally trillions of end branchings. Almost everyone knows about the computer internet. The mycelium shares the same network design.
When they're connected together and carbon is moving between plants, the trees are supporting the weaker ones. If she knows that there's pests around and that she's under danger, she will increase her competitive environment towards her own babies so that they regenerate further away. It's a magical thing.
We found novel molecules highly active against pox viruses, novel molecules highly active against HPV.
They have incredible capacity to make things change very, very quickly. So if we can work with them, if we get it, if humans get it, we can change this thing really fast. So I am super hopeful.
Nothing lives alone in nature. Communities survive better than individuals. Let's use our connection to Earth and to one another to preserve, protect, feed, and grow.
We need to have a paradigm shift in our consciousness. What will it take to achieve that? We are not an individual. We are a vast network. The interconnectedness of being is who we are.
Can you hear me? You don't need to touch it. Don't need to touch it. He's looking, he says, Hi, and welcome back to day 4 of the Harmonic Convergence 2020. I'm Michelle Anderson from Awakening Code Radio on KXFM, and I am overjoyed to introduce our speaker today. James Gilliland is a personal friend of mine, and I've known him since 2008, and I'm really excited that he's going to share his experience with benevolent extraterrestrial beings. And we welcome James Gilliland. Are you there, James?
I'm here.
Yay. So how are you doing? You're there at ESETI Ranch in Washington, right?
Yeah, been a busy day. I've been putting in fences all morning, so took a break to come in here.
I know you're gearing up for your event that you have at the end of July at ESETI. You have a big conference every year there, and a lot of my friends have come. I know you've invited me to come before, and what I have witnessed happening at the ranch is a lot of activity. Can you tell us a little bit about what goes on and how you call in these ships and what your communications with them, what they communicate with you?
Yeah, this has been going on actually all my life. I've had contact, and I didn't fully understand it. I had to kind of grow into it. But here at the ranch, it's just ongoing. Some slow night will be like 20 or 30 ships, honestly. And we've filmed well over 200 before. There's just so much activity because we're right at the base of Mount Adams, and there's a light door that opens on the mountain, and ships go in and out, and there's a cave as well that they go in and out, and you can see it when it opens. There's a big flash of light, a really bright light that is on the mountain, and the candle power's off the scale. There's people that try to say we're filming campers and things like that, but we call them launching campers because they launch into space, so that eliminates that. And we had Rob Freeman come up here, and he has he calls them weapons of mass detection. He's got $150,000 worth of gear. He has thermal, everything, night vision, everything you can think of, military grade, high level stuff. And he came to check it out, and when he left, he said, I have more questions than answers, because these lights that they're seeing are cold light. They're not hot. They're not warm. And he said that there's no body attached to it. They move all over the mountain. They move over just extremely rugged terrain, and they take off and go into space. So, he said he doesn't have any explanation for this, but we do. We know what they are. That a lot of them are Merkabahs. They're actually the beings themselves create their own ship, you might say. And so we've had landings, and we've had remote viewers come out and totally validate our information, flying blind. All they have is a number to look at. And John Vivanco's group has come out, and same thing. I told him, a ship landed, and I said, these are feline beings. And the remote viewers actually drew humans with cat ears. And they said they're humanoid cat beings. And so, detailed information has come through that, and they were flying blind. They had nothing to go by. Just very accurate information.
What do you think the feline beings represent? What do they want us to know?
Well, they're explorers and protectors, and they're part of our ancient history. We used to, in ancient India, they call them Narisha and Narsringa, Sekhmet in Egypt. They were the protectors of the gods, and there's 3 levels to them. There's a humanoid cat-like being, there's a panther being that's very tall, and then there's lion beings that are about 17 feet tall. And the males are about 17. The females are probably around 14 feet tall. But, very, very beautiful beings. In the past, they called them the protectors of the gods. And the gods are returning, And so, you look in the Bible, it always says Elohim, which is plural, when they refer to gods. But there's another ultimate creator, whatever you want to call it, that created them. But the more you look into our ancient history, it's all there. It's replete with visitations from off-world beings, and some were dimensional, some were interdimensional, and or some say transdimensional. There's different wordings for that, but We live in a multi-dimensional universe, and we are multi-dimensional beings. And if you run around thinking you're a body and a personality, that's what you are. That's all you have access to. But when you explore your multi-dimensional self, contact comes with enlightenment and with that journey.
So when you meet with these beings, are you doing a meditation first, or how are you finding that you have more contact? You seem to have more contact than most there, as you explained in the beginning about the doorway there at Mount Adams. And what are you doing to call them forward? And are you always getting benevolent beings? Is there a protocol that you use?
Well, there is training to heal unseen negative influences and make sure you are working with benevolent beings. You know, we have an old saying, just because you're dead doesn't mean you're enlightened, and just because you're an ET doesn't mean you're benevolent. And there are a lot of people in air that have connected with some malevolent beings that are very self-serving, and they don't even know, and they're doing their bidding. Unfortunately, you know, there's some of the top people in the UFO community are doing that and don't even know. But when you're awake, if you're clairvoyant, you can see them standing right next to them, and you go, whoa, that's a reptilian, or that's a hybrid, you know, gray reptilian hybrid, or things like that. So, you know, you have to use discernment, and there's training involved, and by their fruits you'll know them, you know, the words, you know, what they do and what they say and what they'd have you do, you know.
Do you, when you make contact with them, is there a universal law that people can invoke in terms of just calling forward benevolent beings?
Yeah, definitely. What we do is a clearing method that's very ancient. It's very old. It's gone through the Ernest Holmes, the TIC, Teachings of the Inner Christ, all these programs. They use similar prayers, and we just welcome them in love and light and tell them they're healed and forgiven, lifted and enlightened, and filled and surrounded in the Christ light and the Christ love. And then we ask the beautiful many to take them to their perfect place. And you can invoke Jesus or Buddha or Kuan Yin or Babaji or Mary or whoever, you know, if you don't know who your own personal main teacher and guide is. And it moves them on. It, you know, it gets them out of your space. And if you have a really nasty one, you call on these 17-foot tall lion beings, and they clear them out very quickly.
So when you have contact, I have to say that when I first met you in 2008, you were at the Prophets Conference, and this was before many people were even seeing orbs, and it was a conference about orbs. And I was sitting in the audience looking at your slides, and you showed some slides with sketches and drawings of Pleiadian beings and your guides. I think you had Blagi was one, and Kazekiel, and you talked about your guides. And I was so overwhelmed with emotion. I felt like my heart was remembering something that I had forgotten for a long time. And it was like re-meeting family members. And you and I had that experience when we met. I had that experience when I met Mark Sims. We know each other. It's like there's a soul recognition when you recognize somebody that is a part of this, I don't know, this movement that's happening where we're remembering that our place in the stars. So what are you finding? You're having more contact with feline beings, or with Pleiadians, Andromedans, Arcturians? Do they have a vibrational signature?
Yes, they all do. They have a different signature. There's, like the Pleiadians, a lot of times they're very giddy. Their energy is very giddy, very high, and they have a cool energy, like a cool, graceful energy when they come in. If you're dealing with the Orion Counts of Light, they went through the wars. You know, they're planetary liberators, and they're here to help liberate the Earth right now. They're more down to earth, or more street savvy, you might say. You know, their energies, they're a little stronger. You know, they're stronger in power, but, you know, in the pure love and joy and bliss, that's more Pleiadian. A lot of Pleiadians that incarnate here get the crap kicked out of them. I hate to say it, but that's what happens, because they have no concept of somebody lying to them or stealing from them or hurting them or abusing them in any way. It's not part of the reality. So they have to get street savvy, really quick when they're here. And it's really hard on them energetically to be here. After you incarnate, it's a little different, but the other ones really have a hard time being in our energy field.